in a general sense, he is not an ordinary, from the very, very beginning, not ordinary. And more specifically, he's a manifestation, of course in our language he's an angsa of Vayu. Under Krishna can expand himself. So Krishna does expand himself in different ways, and there are different categories according to our Gaudiya Vaishnava teachings, different categories of Krishna's expansions. And similarly, this is what we discussed before, demigods under the order of the Supreme Lord Vishnu give the technology of how they do that. It just states that they, under the order of Vishnu, expand themselves, or an angsa of them, a portion of them expands into some living entity. So that's what happened with Madhvacarya at a time that just going back a little bit, at a time when Buddha's coming caused disruption. He rejected the Vedas. Shankara came, he accepted the Vedas but distorted the meaning. The demigods were disturbed. The demigods went to Brahma. Brahma went to Vishnu. Help! Vishnu went to Vayu. This is a service for you. And he said yes. So he appeared as Vasudeva, the son of Madhyageha Bhatta. And his mother was Vedavati. We're going to hear something more about both of them today. So he appeared as Vayu, appeared as their son, and his pastimes from the very beginning were extraordinary, similar to Bhima, because it's understood, and this is a theme throughout the biography of Madhvacarya, which this is a biography written by two of his intimate associate disciples who had first-hand experience of being with him and seeing his character and qualities and so forth. Similar to Bhima. So the connection between Vayu and Hanuman is easy, because Hanuman was the son of Vayu. Bhima was the son of Vayu. And Madhvacarya was Vayu, or an expansion of Vayu. So there's that connection, and that is the pastimes of Madhvacarya recorded by these very respected acharya, panditacharya personalities, Narayana Panditacharya particularly, establish his qualities and pastimes and activities much like Bhima and much like Hanuman. And we'll see some more of that as we go forward. So Hanuman could leap great distances. Hanuman had incredible strength. He could lift a whole mountain. Bhima had voracious appetite and also incredibly strong. One of the issues, when the Pandavas were born in the forest, and when Pandu died, there were 5 boys and their mother. And Madri entered into the funeral pyre of her husband. Kunti was left caring for 5 strapping young boys. So when they came back to the capital, the boys were boys, and boys do boys' activities, and they would sometimes play, and sometimes they would wrestle. And Bhima, in his activities of wrestling, he would just sometimes pick up one of the boys and toss them a big long distance just for fun. He wasn't mean to hurt them because he was so powerful. And boy, did that irritate Duryodhana too much. So he began to conspire how to get rid of him. And that led to many, many things. So there's an enmity between Duryodhana and Bhima, which we discussed a little bit. And as Bhima had powers, Madhvacarya had powers of strength, tenacity, Bhima-like powers, and Hanuman-like powers. So we've covered 12 so far, and we're up to the point where he has achieved, or he has attained his upanayana from his father. We had some discussion. He's not here this morning. Balaram Prasad had a question about how come in ISKCON we don't have upanayana for kids. And a little research after the class, some of you may have received all these things already. You received them already. Prabhupada, when he was 12, received a formal, according to Lilamrita, meaning his own acknowledgement. So it appeared in Lilamrita. When he was 12, because his father was a Vaishnav, he received upanayana. But the person who gave upanayana was a professional person, and it didn't have much of an impression on Srila Prabhupada. But upanayana, technically, is receiving a sacred thread and receiving mantras. Particularly during this time, Gayatri mantra and other mantras that one during different times of the day recites. And Srila Prabhupada, again, when he was a young man with children and so forth, he received the real upanayana, or mantras, plural, from Bhaktisiddhanta. So it wasn't a transgression of etiquette because the mantras that he received were not through disciplic succession. Now, why, back to Balaram Prasad's question, which kind of ends where this session begins, why in ISKCON we don't have upanayana? Because it's part of a Vedic process. And one of the reasons, perhaps the main reason, is because young people, while they may like kirtan, they may not have the right qualifications, because upanayana, Prabhupada specifically expresses, upanayana is for those who have qualification. For those that don't have qualification, how to get qualification. So one of the main principles for becoming qualified is the purification that comes from chanting of the holy name. Cetadarpana marjanam. And then from that chanting, becoming purified, becoming qualified, and according to Bhaktisiddhanta's practice and Prabhupada's practice, then Harinam Diksha, and after some time and qualification and evaluation, then there may be upanayana or Gayatri mantras or our second initiation. And the point is, it's not done in ISKCON for children because it requires qualification. And what might have been the case for brahmanas of yore is not the case today, because children are not so qualified. Or not only children aren't so qualified, people are not so qualified. And therefore it's not done. At least this is the standard and the practice of Bhaktisiddhanta continued by Prabhupada, and then that it means, for us in ISKCON. So that's the upanayana question. So generally speaking, after upanayana, then there's the formal education. And that's what's next, the formal education, the Gurukula education. After Vasudeva's father gave him Upanayana, it's now time for the boy to be enrolled in school. So he enrolled him in a nearby school with who had a very, very qualified Gurukul teacher. This is the system. Commonly, not always, but commonly, like Sandipani Muni, was a Grahastha. And the boys would stay at the home or in the ashram of the teacher. And the mother or the wife of the teacher would look after the boys like her own children, because they're boys. And they need mothers. But, their mother became then the teacher. Just like according to Vedic culture, there's 7 mothers. And one of them is the wife of the teacher, the guru. So he enrolled in the guru, Kula, and his teacher's name was Pugavana. And then he had a local name. Totani Tilaya. Hope I'm pronouncing it right. Totana Tilaya. So the Tilaya, Totana, had a tota, a forest, or a land. He had a garden, and so that's his name, Totana Tilaya. And he had a number of children that were his students. So being enrolled in the school, this Totan Tilaya was the Brahmin teacher for many of the local boys. I guess this painting is meant to show his father taking him to the Gurukula. Madhvacarya was happy that his mischievous and prodigious son would be taken care of by the teacher. And sure enough, he was. However, because Vasudev was who he was superlative in everything. Whether it was playing, of course wrestling, because he's as strong as Bhima, his studies, everything was superlative. And the biography of Narayana Panditacharya writes, "This incarnation of Lord Vasudev is swifter than the mind, having controlled his mind. Nobody can compare to him." So this is his follower writing a biography. This is not so dissimilar from what Satsrup Maharaj did as the biography of Srila Prabhupada, your ever well-wisher. It's comparable. And he has, nice things to say about his teacher. But here's a little wrestling comment from the book. He would always take on and beat bigger boys, because he had his Upanayana when he was young. Remember that? Normally it's at 8, and he was Upanayana when he's 5. So the other students were probably a few years older, probably a little bigger. And, he liked to wrestle. And they had a nickname for him, Bhima. So when he was wrestling and grabbed them in a wrestling hold, they couldn't break the wrestling hold because he was so strong. The weight he could lift or carry effortlessly could only be compared to Hanuman. That's a statement directly in this biography. Similarly, it says that Vasudeva, with a gently smiling face, easily defeated everyone, not just in wrestling, but everything. His friends, associates, and peers would sometimes, after being defeated by Vasudeva in water sports, splash water at him, making his luster and reddish eyes appear even more beautiful. So it's nice, it's poetic glorification of Madhvacarya or Vasudev. Vasudev's Brahmin teacher could not relate to Vasudev's brilliance. Specifically, he seemed like he was just interested in his studies. He'd run away, go home, eat more food, then slowly return, seeming like he was just not interested in studies. So one time his teacher became angry, and he accused this boy, saying, "Why do you not study with your school friends? You act as though indifferent to studying." No teacher. Teacher has a privilege to speak like that. You know this from Bhagavad Gita. Prabhupada explains, someone should not instruct others or what to speak of scold others if one doesn't have that relationship. And one who has that relationship, they may, and in fact they should, when it's necessary, speak a way of correcting measures. So you're a lazy student. What's going on? And the boy, Vasudev, replied, they didn't see the point of repeating that which he had already learned. And besides, I'm completely up to date with all my studies. So his teacher challenged him and said, I want to hear you recite all of today's slokas. And he recited all of the day's slokas in one they hadn't studied yet. And his teacher was pretty astonished at that. This biography said the demigods came to hear. Not only he had it memorized, but sometimes even we may memorize a verse and it's not spoken properly. But there's all kinds of Sanskrit rules of swara and all meter and everything, and he knew it perfectly. He didn't really need to go to school, but he was showing by example. You learn from a teacher. And the demigods were wondering, who is this boy? And again it happened, and so it evolved that he had a nice title, Hanumana Tirtha, because he could recite and explain and give purports to so many verses. So this is very surprising. Very special young boy. Once, a fellow student in the Gurukul developed an unbearable acute headache. So what did Vasudev do? He blew into the boy's ear, and the headache went away. Vayu, right? Blew into the boy's ear. In one of the biographies, it says that by Vasudev's divine breath, he not only cured the boy's headache, but at the same time showed, as though by television, no, that probably wasn't in the biography because they didn't have television, but as though by television, his many person, the conditions during his time in this world were being revealed to the boy just by Vasudev blowing into his ear. There he is, young student. Again, from this special biography by Narayana Bhattacharya, Vasudeva understood the hymns of Itri Upanishad, having heard it just once. Like perfect memory, right? Phew. That's not me, that's for sure. This Upanishad became his lifelong favorite. Even it is recorded in this book, Madhva Vijaya, that Vasudev gave more clear explanations on this Upanishad than his teacher. So we'll hear some more about that very special situation. By now his teacher was beginning to realize how fortunate he was having such an incredible pupil in his school. It wasn't, however, until graduation day that the bond was duly sealed. So when there's graduation day, there's dakshin. And when the dakshin was being offered, Vasudev took his spiritual master to a secret place and he explained the entire meaning of Itri Upanishad. Because specifically, Itri Upanishad indicates moksha through bhakti. And the demigods, very happy, They prayed, "Oh Vasudev, oh Lord, destroy the wicked completely. Give happiness to your own people, describe fully and clearly the concealed by Advaita doctrine, qualities," because Advaitas say the absolute truth has no qualities, or nirguna. And Madhvacarya taught us the opposite, saguna, and so forth. Taking formal position of the Brahmin Guru, Vasudev prepared to take up the next phase of his work, which was giving joy to the Devatas. So that's his life in Gurukula. And then comes his dakshina. He already gave one dakshina. That was the explanation of Itri Upanishad to his guru, who was lifelong very interested. Many years after graduating from the school and becoming a sannyasi, Madhva returned to the Gurukula. He asked his guru if he can give any further Guru Dakshina, in addition to what already happened. Out of humility, the guru said, "Not needed, thank you so much." And already by this time, Madhva, although speaking very humbly to his guru, who he taught teachings to, but he is now the head of a whole system of thought, the Brahma Madhva line, or at least it's in its budding stage. So he declined. He asked his wife, "You took care of us very nicely during our Gurukula days," because the wife of the guru does like that. "And so I'd like to offer some dakshin to you. Please suggest." So she said, "Well, when we had the school, now there's not many students, but when we had the school, all the children would go collect water from the nearby streams, pour water from the nearby streams on the agricultural land." Remember, he had a garden. And now there isn't students, and so my husband has to go and personally fetch water from the streams. So the indication is, can you do something about that? Madhva did something about that. He went outside the home, took his sannyas danda, and then hit it on the ground. Immediately, a stream of water came out from the ground, which irrigated the adjoining land of his teacher. So that stream that came out of the ground from his danda being hit strongly on the ground became known as Danda Tirtha. Nice name for a place that's formed by his danda. Madhva created 3 such Danda Tirthas as part of his pastimes on 3 different occasions. So there it is. There's the pond that came as a result of his danda striking the ground to assist the wife of his guru. In Udupi, the head of the Adipati Mutt bathes in Danda Tirtha before any deity worship service. That's another one. That doesn't give the history of how that one was formed, but it had a practical use. So that's 2 pastimes out of 4. Next, there's something I'm going to have to read because it's very involved. There's a pastime where the deity of Hanuman made his appearance in his guru's home. So here's some reading. Not too long. The current descendant of his teacher became a psychiatrist and migrated to the U.S. in 1970. He served as the physician on Rikers Island. You ever heard of Rikers Island? It's a prison. It's a prison. Rikers Island is a prison near Staten Island. It's off in the sea, and they got a prison out there in the sea, so the prisoners have a hard time escaping. And if they escape, they're going to have to navigate the ocean. Rikers Island. So his descendant became a psychiatrist at Rikers Island. Rikers Island Prison employed a large number of mental health professionals. One night, this descendant got a call from the prison authorities to come to the prison as one inmate had committed suicide. So, he drove from his home to Rikers Island Prison in the middle of the night, and there's a bridge to cross to get to the Rikers Island. By the time he had done all the formalities of assessing the suicide as being voluntary by the inmate, and not as a result of being beaten by anyone, the police or other inmates, it's 1 or 2 in the morning. Now he's in a dilemma what to do. It's 1 or 2 in the morning, I've done my duty, and now I have to go back home, and I'm drowsy, it's not safe. So he decided to take a nap first, and then to drive after he had a nap. So he took a nap. In his dream, he saw that he was on one side of a gorge. Gorge is like a big valley, and there's like a stream at the bottom of the gorge. So he was on one side of the gorge, and below there were many monkeys in his dream. One among the monkeys was a tall, dark monkey. And that monkey started throwing stones at him. This descendant of his teacher, in his dream, began to run away from the band of monkeys. And he strangely, in his dream, found himself in an alley. Just as he was about to disappear, find a way out of that alley, he found that same monkey again, who shouted loudly, "Do you want to hit me? Do you want to hit me?" Pretty strange dream. He's a psychiatrist. Suddenly, the psychiatrist woke up and shouted for help. The prison guard rushed to him and asked, "What happened?" The psychiatrist said that someone hit him on his head, and he still felt a pain on his head. The psychiatrist said that someone hit him on his head. The guards searched around to check if any prisoner had escaped and hit him. After half an hour of doing their checking to see if there was a jailbreak, they concluded that didn't happen. Thereafter, the psychiatrist drove back to his home. His home was somewhere in the boroughs of New York City, Brooklyn or Queens, it doesn't say. This entire episode left him shaken. So, he called his nephew, who was taking care of a Hanuman deity at his ancestral home in Udupi, at the home of his ancestral, the guru of Madhvacarya, or Vasudev. So he was looking after the Hanuman deity at that place, and asked him if everything was fine with the worship of the Hanuman deity. His nephew replied that a few days ago, the roof above Hanuman had begun to give way, and it appeared that it may crumble down any moment. So the nephew tried to make arrangements to fix the problem. On hearing it, the psychiatrist felt that Hanuman wanted to be taken care of nicely. He took his next flight to India and went right to the place where the altar was for the worship of Hanuman. The deity's picture is given below. That's supposed to be this. Where is Shatrupa? Yes, that's the deity of Hanuman? Oh, there he is. Okay. The deity of Hanuman. The entire Danda Tirtha with the Hanuman deity was actually given to the head of one of the 8. So during Madhvacarya's time, he established different mats with Udupi Krishna at the center. So one of those mats that was established by Madhvacarya was this deity of Hanuman, right next to where the Danda Tirtha place is. The psychiatrist took control of the place after a legal battle with the mutt, as he found the mutt was not performing the puja properly, nor making the upkeep of the property properly. Now that he is retired, he's focusing on the glories of this place to be propagated and to have more programs at this place. He lives in a house adjacent to the temple and pond at Danda Tirtha. Interesting? One more. That was number 3 of 4. And the final one was Madhvacharya's taking sannyas. And his sannyas name is Purna Pragya, who received sannyas initiation from Achyuta Pragya, or Achyuta Pragya Tirtha. Tirtha being a name that was sannyas name that was given to him from a sannyasi. We'll hear some more about Achyuta Pragya's sannyas order, and then Purna Pragya. So now he is a small boy. He's graduated from his Gurukula. And now what's next? Now he's not just one of us figuring out what's my career going to be. By the way, it's a big part of what young people get immersed in is what's my career going to be. You all have children. When your children get to that stage, it's a big thing. And I've got so many children, and it's a big thing. So he's not just a teenager wanting to contemplating what's my career going to be. His mind was constantly occupied in contemplating Hari. And he wanted to correct the misrepresentation of the tenets of Vedic scriptures, specifically the tenets that had been distorted by Shankaracharya. He thought, people turn towards God and contemplation of His grace and virtues only when they lose interest in materialistic pleasures. At that state, meaning if someone is too much absorbed in materialistic pleasures, it's pretty hard to take an interest in transcendence. At that stage, men emulate gurus and elders whom they esteem. Therefore, I will adopt the Paramahansa sannyas, as it will reveal my intrinsic disinterest in materialistic pleasures. So as a strategy. So he's a young boy, he's at his home, he's with his mother and father, and at home, again and again and again, he's offering obeisances and offering obeisances and offering obeisances and offering obeisances and offering obeisances. And his parents are wondering what's up. He's offering his obeisances to the Supreme Personality, Lord Hari, who is within everything and everywhere. So this becomes an important part of his teaching. The basis or foundation is not Brahman, but Lord Hari, who is within everything and everywhere. So his parents saw this, and they asked, why are you doing this? And his answer was that he was offering his obeisances or prostrations unto the belongings of his master, Narayana. The belongings of his master means his paraphernalia. And what's the paraphernalia? No, Madhvacharya's teachings are being already exhibited, that the paraphernalia is everything. Because it's all the energy of the Supreme. And indwelling within everything is the Supreme. So he's offering his obeisances everywhere in all directions to Lord Hari, because he's everywhere present. He, who is the guru of the whole world, set out to find himself a guru for himself, to establish a role model to the world for seeking knowledge and initiation. So it's where it's leading to. He's already had his formal education in scripture, and now he's going to take the formal step of sannyas initiation. Now, Mom and Dad have a different idea. Uh-oh. Showdown. Guess what Mom and Dad want? Get married and have children, and you'll take care of us when we get old. Om Jai Jagadish Hare. Vasudev had heard that there was an old ascetic in a district, Purna Pragya. I don't know if I'm saying it right. Anybody know? Is that the right way to say it? Say it. Purna Pragya. Rakeri. Pond. Okay. Bandara Keri. Banda Rakeri. Okay. Just a few miles north of Udupi. We're going to see the name a few times. So he's an old ascetic. Now, if you were part of what we discussed the very first day we gathered together, there's some history. You know the history because you're from that place. The Srivali group of Brahmins that came from UP and they settled there. So they had a certain tendency to be interested in Bhagavatam, or Bhagavad Katha. So they were known, contemporarily at least, as the Bhagavata Sampradaya. And they got a little messed up or influenced by Shankaracharya, but they still maintained, according to this biography at least, they maintained an affection and an affiliation for the Bhagavatam. So this renowned sannyasi that lived in this place, the name I have difficulty pronouncing, Bandarekere, close? Oh, you're leaving out the Ra. Bandara Keri. Close. I'm getting there. I'll just rehearse and practice. Because I'm going to be in front of a lot of people that know how to pronounce it, and they're going to think this Western kid. Okay. So this renunciate sannyasi, north of Udupi, in this nice place, had in his line of sannyas a tradition that was from the old school, where they came from. They had an interest in Bhagavad Gita. So that's the sannyas initiation that he had. So he was named, his sannyas name, Achyuta Preksha. He who seeks the Lord Achyuta. So before his sannyas, his name was Purushottam Tirtha, that's easy. And he was also a third name, Achyuta Pragya Tirtha. And this biography says that in his previous life, Achyuta Preksha was an ascetic who received alms only from good people. And specifically, he stayed with the Pandavas in his previous life, which was not just one generation before, but some number of generations before. And for several years, he took only the prasad that was cooked by Draupadi. So, on the soul platform, he had become very purified. And there we see Durvasa Muni. And he had taken sannyas from a lineage that descended from Durvasa Muni, specifically in this Bhagavat Marg sannyas order. So it was a good match. Here's a little detail. A little detail is found in Gopal Champu. No. Harivamsa. Harivamsa says, when it came time for Krishna to go to school, this is Krishna going to school, not sannyas, he decided who his guru should be, his teacher. And he decided he shouldn't go to a very qualified Vaishnava teacher, because it wouldn't work. How could the Vaishnava teacher, they would know who he is, the Supreme Personality of God, so how could they accept him as a student? So he went to a very elevated person, a Shaivite. Maybe you didn't know this, but it's in Harivamsa. Sandipani Muni was a Shaivite. But Krishna wanted to convert him to become Vaishnava, and he did. So in this case, he is considering who should be my sannyas guru. So as a sannyas guru has these qualifications. He is respected within his community, and in his background, there's a Bhagavata school tradition in his background, in the sannyas tradition in which he came, and the Durvasa Muni, similarly, from the Bhagavata Marg. There was a line of sannyas that descended from Durvasa Muni. However, there was some influence due to Adi Shankara. For about 400 years, the sannyasis of this order had started to practice some Bhagavat Marg principles interspersed with Advaita philosophy. In other words, it was unfortunately a bit of a mix. And that's the way it is. That's the way it was, and that's the way it is. It's hard to find something that's unmixed. It's possible, but it's hard to find something unmixed. The monks of this order, which Achyuta Preksha was part, were not strong enough to scripturally and logically counteract the Advaita philosophy. So they kind of caved in a little bit. So what about us? What's the message? We should be very clear, because after the generation, after the generation, after the generation, there's the fading principle. Prabhupada was strong and pure and powerful, and then the next generation, and then the next generation. So that the fading concepts, because guess what? Kali Yuga is progressing, and as Kali Yuga progresses, there must be persons who become very immersed in Bhagavat Marg or Bhagavat Bhakti, not just by, all the other kids are doing it, or it's fashion, or something like that. I mean, fashion is okay, behaviors are fine, but there should be something upon which behaviors are resting. And if those behaviors are not resting upon something that's firm, I mean, this was one of Amatakali's questions the other day. It's a sociological thing. What's going to preserve the tradition? And I had a further thought from that discussion. It's opening the door, and so maybe I'm going to regret opening the door. One of the things that we learned in the course of hearing about Madhvacarya is what his father did. Not only his father performed Garbhodan Sanskara, which Prabhupada instructed that before conceiving a child, mother and father should do, but for 12 years there was something else. And that was to qualify themselves to have qualified children. So, some of you have children, some of you don't have children, some of you may have additional children. If you want to help ensure the preservation of the tradition, then those steps should be taken before producing children, because otherwise, who knows? Because then your children are going to be subject to Kali Yuga's progression. I think I'll stop there. Okay. Once the preceptor, Purna Pragya, listen to this, it's very nice. He heard from his guru. Just before his guru, his sannyas guru, was going to depart the world, he called him. His parting words were this: although we are dressed as Advaitins, that was the custom at the time. The influence of Shankara's teaching was like that. We're not Mayavadis. Mayavad propounds that when the knowledge that when I am myself Parabrahman is fully cognized and assimilated, there will be nothing else existing other than the self. This tenet is not justifiable. Now this is Achyuta Preksha's guru. And we heard in the first day that before they became Madhvacharya's disciples, the most prominent scholarly personality in the western side of India at that time was this Trivikram Pandit. And Trivikram Pandit, like everybody else in his time, was very much under the influence of the teachings of Shankaracharya, because that was it. That was it. And he studied it, and he found discrepancies, and he was disturbed by those discrepancies, and he couldn't find anybody he could have conversation with about it. It wasn't just conversation. Trivikram, we heard this first day, he wanted to be properly grounded in the different characteristics of authority, Brahma Sutra, the Upanishads, and the Smritis. Remember that discussion? And he couldn't find anyone. His younger brother had become an initiated disciple of Madhvacharya, and Madhvacharya had entrusted to his brother scriptures, and his brother was filled with Madhvacharya's teachings. Through his younger brother, he had access to these scriptures and Madhvacharya's teachings, and he became very attracted to plausible explanation. But he's not like just a kid, he's a super scholar. So in this biography, he had a 15-day debate with Madhvacharya. And at the end of the 15th day, he surrendered and requested becoming his disciple. So Trivikram Acharya, or Trivikram Pandit, was one of the authors writing biographies about Madhvacharya, because after his initiation by Madhvacharya, he had intimate association for years and years and years. Intimate association. So something very similar, not the same, but something very similar to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and his close associates. Who were Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's two closest associates in Puri? Two closest associates Ramananda Roy? Swarup Damodar. And Swarup Damodar had not only close association, but he had spiritual gifts given to him by the personality of Godhead, which meant that he could not only understand when Lord Chaitanya did something or said something, what it meant, but he understood his mood. He had that realization, and he, Swarup Damodar, downloaded it. No password required. He just downloaded everything to Raghunath Das Goswami, who then passed it on to Krishnadas Kaviraj, who then recorded it. That's our biography history of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And a very similar pattern was these two, Trivikramacharya, Panditacharya, and his next generation follower, Narayana Panditacharya, writing all these things. So they, like Achyuta Preksha, his guru, said, this is not justifiable doctrine. It's a doctrine, and say it again, a lot of people bought into it. Why did people buy into it? It's a tendency, a conditioned tendency, to not take shelter of Lord Hari. Why are we in the material world? Turning our backs on Lord Hari. But supposing somebody's pious or theistic, so then they take the shelter of Hari and it becomes not shelter of Hari on the authority of the Vedas. And so it's not justifiable. And discerning persons like Achyuta Preksha's guru, Sannyas guru, understood it. So he accepted the external attire of an Advaitin, but he wasn't buying into the unjustifiable doctrine. Special. That's not usual. It's special characteristic. And that's so Achyuta Preksha, his is further instruction, last advice, parting advice, never accept this. This tenet of Atma Aikya, or that seeing oneness with the Supreme, prescribed for contemplation by Mayavad, has not been realized by me or my Guru or any of his predecessors ever. I advise you to worship Mukunda, who alone can give moksha, for getting the correct tattva gyan. And he departed this world. Achyuta Preksha pondered repeatedly over this advice. He decided to stay in Udupi and worship Lord Ananteshwara. Nice image, we've seen this Ananteshwara image many times. With his mind constantly engaged in Ananteshwara, keenly looking forward to the realization of the predicted divine blessing, Achyuta Preksha pondered over his Guru's last words and instructions to him for a long time. Remember from yesterday, the story of Gokarna and the advice of the Vaikuntha-vasis. It's not just hearing, but deep contemplation, taking the matter very seriously. It's a small thing, but it's a bhakti thing, and it's what opens the door for getting a deeper understanding or a realization or an experience. One day, listen to this, in deep thought on this matter, Lord Ananteshwara again entered the body of an ordinary man, because that happened previously when it was predicted that Madhvacarya would appear. And that ordinary man approached Achyuta Preksha, saying, "Know that I will send soon to you the best of disciples to fulfill your mission to your Guru and to me." So he had this epiphany that was not granted to an ordinary fellow, someone that was deeply pondering and couldn't understand, fathom it properly, that we may have that experience in reading some scriptural passages and finding it intriguing, yet we can't clearly understand it, don't stop. Brahma Jigyasa, keep being inquisitive, trying to understand, trying to know. And you may get some special revelation, maybe not some person saying like this. Achyuta Preksha was now residing in the area of Ananteshwara temple in Udupi at the oh, this is missing another A. This is just Bandarkari. Bandar. So they'll go back and correct the spelling, because the other said, and they put an extra A in there. Bandarkari. That's easy. So, Achyuta Preksha doesn't need disciples, but the disciple needs a guru. So, Vasudev started visiting him daily at this Bandarkari Mat. Okay. And he started feeling the feelings of taking shelter for accepting sannyas from Achyuta Preksha. And meanwhile, the standard procedure, Achyuta Preksha was training and also observing. So Achyuta Preksha had this intuition from their first meeting that this pledge that he heard from the deity, Ananteshwara deity, this was the person, the best of disciples. At the same time, there's Dad, Majjigeha, and he heard that his son was spending a whole lot of time with Achyuta Preksha, so he started to worry, uh-oh. Anticipating separation from his son, he came to Udupi, because his home was in Udupi, some distance away, but not terrible distance away. And by now, it's considered that Vasudev, his son, has become a disciple or an aspiring disciple. So he started doing what dads sometimes do. He pleaded with him, "You're the only son, and it's not proper that you take a vow of an ascetic, because what's going to happen to us? We're your parents, we've done so much service, and it's your duty. No one will look after us." And Vasudev's father offered obeisances to his son, pleading and pleading and pleading. So the clever son said, "Just see, for someone of your age to offer obeisances means you've already accepted that I've taken sannyas. So thank you very much." And his father saw the determination, of what to speak of the cleverness. And he went home, and he was very distressed. Very distressed. Very distressed. When you're distressed, it seems like time passes slowly. When you're having fun, time doesn't pass. When you're distressed, time passes slowly. So he came back one more time and tried again. And at this time during the visit, his father became angry and pledged, "I'm going to take an oath that if you take this step, I'm going to fast until death. You take the vows and attire of ascetic, I'm going to fast until death." So what's the little boy going to do? He took his upper garment, ripped it into copings, and said, "I'm going to wear this. Now let you go ahead and follow your thread." And he said, it's not right for the guardian, the father, to stand in the way of something that his son or dependent is doing that's pleasing to the Lord. His father was defeated. The comment from this biography is he was simultaneously very firm at the same time sympathetic, because he had a purpose, a prime duty, pleasing the Supreme Lord, because that's why he was sent, to disrupt these teachings that were making havoc, Kali Yuga playground of misleading people into understanding proper teachings of the Vedas. Now his father's not unqualified, his father's very qualified. He then referred to some passage from Manu Samhita, but his son outdoes him. The passage from Manu Samhita is, there is no better and more sacred duty than a son taking care of his parents in their old age. Vasudeva was their only surviving son, because there were two boys that were born, but they didn't continue to live. So you're going to leave us unprotected? Manu Samhita says this is your duty, do your duty. Vasudeva replied. Interesting. The scriptures recommend that whenever a man gets the inner urge for renunciation, he should take the oath of being an ascetic immediately. Yet, although I have already completely renounced the world, I will not take sannyas before an alternate protector is arranged for you. And it was arranged. They had another son. But it wasn't there yet. The father, Madhyageha, said he had learned many scriptures and he could accept the pain of losing his son, but what about your mother? Very practical. Vasudeva said, I won't do this without the consent of my mother. So he thought, checkmate, because his mother's never going to agree. But after some time, they had another son. So the younger brother of Vasudeva was the remaining person to look after Vedavati, the mother. After some time, Vasudeva went back and visited their home. This is with a younger brother, and saying, "This is my younger brother. He's going to look after you." Now, the mother's clever too. She's a Brahmani, and she said, "I've already decided. I'm not going to give permission." So what did the boy say? "If you wish to see me again sometime, please permit me to accept the renounced order of life. If not, I will go away from this place and never to return, and never you'll see me again. No sannyas, but you'll never see me again." Check, playing chess, right? So his mother decided, go ahead, take sannyas. At least I'll see you again. And there's that possibility, and if you leave and never come back again because you're true to your word, I'll never see you again, so you can take sannyas. And so he did. Later, this biography says that his younger brother also took sannyas from Madhvacarya. And his sannyas name was Vishnu Tirtha. But that was after the mother and father were gone, of course. And Vishnu Tirtha was appointed as the head of one of the mats of Madhvacarya, specifically the Sode mat. And they lived happily ever after, right? Vasudeva told his guru, Achyuta Preksha, that his parents have agreed, and he began to prepare for the ceremony. It took some time, and Vasudeva knew all the procedures. His guru didn't have to do the procedures. A whole year passed before the ritual was done, and then in the ceremony he gave him a mantra and a name, Purna Pragya. On the auspicious day of the ceremony, the Ananteshwara temple at the Ananteshwara temple in Udupi, as Purna Pragya prostrated before the deity, the Lord manifested himself personally, held him in his arms, and lifted him up. What a sight that must have been. The Lord then took him to his guru and told him, "You had always meditated on me for a long time for learning the correct tenets of Vedanta. I am giving you Purna Pragya as your boon." Achyuta Preksha received this benediction from the Lord gratefully and felt blessed. And that's the last slide. Madhvacharya is now a sannyasi, holding his two fingers up in the air. He hasn't given all of his teachings yet, but we know what those two fingers mean because we discussed it yesterday. And so far, that's just the first two classes. Out of 20. So let's see if there's some discussion. We're learning a lot, huh? I'm learning a lot. I don't know about you. I'm learning a lot. Very different. Yes.
Guru Maharaj, the disciplic succession that Srila Prabhupada gave us shows that Madhvacharya comes right after Vyasadeva. And there's quite a time lag.
Yes, there is.
And today we heard about the Shiksha line.
Yes.
The Diksha line.
Yeah, this is the Sannyas Diksha line.
And so how is it that after Vyasadeva, Prabhupada listed Madhvacharya? And a related question is, do the Madhvas also see it the same way? You know, Krishna, Brahma?
My understanding is yes, because it comes from Madhva. Now, in this same biography, I think it's the same biography. One of the biographies I read long, long ago, and I'm not sure it's the same one, Madhvacharya made a number of tours throughout all of India, gathering scriptures and having discussions and so forth and so on. And one of those times, Madhva went all the way to the Himalayas. And there was one assistant with him. And all of a sudden, Madhva, like Hanuman, started bounding in big leaps, heading into the northern parts of the Himalayas, essentially into the higher dimensional space where Vyasadeva, according to our teachings, I guess it's according to theirs as well, Vyasadeva is waiting to become, to take some service in the next Yuga cycle. Forget what that other service is, but Vyasadeva is still presently residing in this upper dimensional space. And he, Madhva, went before Vyasadeva and inquired from him, presented his teaching, sought verification, got it, came back down. And there was his disciple waiting for him. Oh, here you are. So there was a direct interaction with Vyas. And the big gap is because there's a big gap. He heard directly. So my understanding is, yes, they accept the same way. He, as we heard earlier, he was worshipping Vyas, while Bhima was worshipping Krishna and Hanuman was worshipping Ram. Madhva was worshipping Vyas. My understanding, I didn't get that far yet. We're, the first two of 18 more classes, but I most likely it's going to be presented. And presently, at least, that's my understanding from something I read maybe 20 years ago. Direct instruction from Vyasa. And yes, they see it the same way. It was from their writings.
These are only the prominent personalities.
Yes, and the way Bhaktisiddhanta structured that list of disciplic succession, because what's in our Bhagavad Gita and many other places comes from Bhaktisiddhanta. And yes, there's gaps in that disciplic line, even in a more contemporary fashion than these other ones.
And it's interesting that up to Madhvacharya, there's only like 5 names listed. And after Madhvacharya, there's like 5 times the number of names listed.
Yes, because there wasn't a prominent person in between. Yes.
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
There wasn't the same degree of prominent persons. It wouldn't be right to say they weren't prominent persons.
Sorry, I didn't realize. So one comment, and I have a couple of questions. The comment is that I was appreciating the Gurukula teacher of Madhvacharya who understood this special personality that he was, and the contrast was in Ramanujacharya's pastime, his teacher Yadava Prakash, on the other hand, he even tried to kill Ramanujacharya.
Yes.
So yeah, that thought came to my mind. One question is from yesterday's class, the Chitraketu.
Which yesterday's class?
You were talking about Chitraketu and Atmadeva, the glories of Bhagavatam.
Yeah.
And one of the, I'm paraphrasing, but one of the things you said was, a Radha that was told to Chitraketu was, Providence says that you're not going to have a child.
Yes.
This is what has been given to you, kind of a thing. And I'm kind of reflecting, sometimes I have this question, now this comes into capacity that we may have as a person, right? Like, our capacity to do things, capacity to, Is
it already prescripted for us?
Yes.
Is that what you're asking?
Yeah.
No. And yes. No, let's say us. We're not King Chitraketu. The teaching that Angira Muni was giving was, this man has beans in his ears. He can't see, 100,000 wives. Was that the number? 1 million? Read the tea leaves. It's pretty clear. So, should we make some endeavor because it's prescripted? We should make endeavor. And we await the mercy of the Supreme Lord. Supposing the mercy of the Supreme Lord doesn't bestow what we're aspiring for, effort upon effort. But if there's something that's blessed, I just was hearing Prabhupada saying, my godbrothers, could you lean that way? Thank you. No, you just went the wrong direction. Okay. No, and this, Prabhu, can you? Yes. Thank you. Thank you. Otherwise, you have to cut off your head. That would be nice. Or I'll keep going like this. So, Prabhupada was saying, my godbrothers said, what Swamiji has accomplished it was not considered possible. There was other constraints besides the limitations of the mind, but there were even actually teachings that said, during Bhaktivinoda Thakur's time, I'm responding to your question kind of indirectly. The answer is, The short answer is no, it's not prescripted. That which is ordained by the Supreme Lord, it will manifest. So now, what about spreading Krishna consciousness in every town and village, which was Lord Chaitanya's teaching? During the time of Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he wrote that there were a group of Brahmins who did not want the teachings to be distributed because it's Kali Yuga, and so they kept it in their temples for their temple staff and the Brahmins who were qualified people to hear. But they didn't follow the instruction of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So he, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, was breaking that tradition by writing books and distributing it all over in many languages. And he was facing opposition from those pundits that wanted to keep it within the four walls of their temples. But he, Bhaktivinoda, had a vision all over the world because it was ordained by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So when something is ordained by a superior authority like Krishna or Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, then it's not impossible. It's prescripted in the sense that someone's going to do it. So Prabhupada was commenting, my godbrothers said, you did what none of us thought was possible. And not only it was possible, but you did it. And then Prabhupada was giving some mandates to his followers to do, the next phase of Mission Impossible. And they were speaking, the scholars that we're associating with, they're saying, what's Swamiji going to do next? Because whatever he wants to do, it seems to happen. No, so if something is ordained, in that sense, it's predetermined. But what about you or me or any one of us having a part in that? It's not prescripted. There's a potential or potency that you practice and practice, and it may not happen like it didn't happen with Prabhupada, and it didn't happen, and it didn't happen, and it didn't, an obstacle, and then it started to happen. And then once it started to happen, it was an avalanche, an explosion. But because it was resting on someone that was qualified. So for you and for me and for all of us, become qualified first. And then we seek that which has descending mercy connected to any effort that we may make. Here's a nice for example. For example, was it prescripted that Krishnadas Kaviraj would write Chaitanya Charitamrita? One might say it was the Lord's plan, but there was a lot of investment of his effort. First of all, his scholarship, impeccable scholarship, and then his hearing directly from Raghunath Das Goswami, who were directly from Sri Damodar, who had full realization of Lord Chaitanya. And he was then asked, not just by Raghunath Das, but all the Vaishnavas. So it's descending. And he didn't just start writing. He went and personally sought the blessings of the senior-most Vaishnavas and the blessings of Madan Mohan and receiving that. So then, in that sense, it's prescripted, but there's something more than just, it's in the cards for you, or it's meant for you, or it's not meant for you. There's the qualification and the descending mercy. And something that's authorized for you or for me or for any one of us. You put those two things together, and that which is not meant to be it happens. This is Kali Yuga, and there's lots of opposition, left and right, to anything. So let's take this one. Is it prescripted that the Hare Krishna movement is going to go on? Or is there something that we need to do to make sure that it goes on? This is the social commentary again. It's going to go on. So just not sit back in your hammock and sip lemonade and it's going to go on. There's something that we have to do so that it will go on. And it takes a concern. Same as this Gokarna story. You're hearing the message of Bhagavatam and contemplating it seriously. That's the qualification, and then something happens. So there's the two things. There's the mercy and there's the effort. Comes down to the same thing. And when you put the two together, then things happen. Is it guaranteed there's mercy? Yes. And what is that mercy? You have to know what the scripture says or what disciplic succession says. This is it. My holy name will be heard in every town and village. Gosh, that's a big mandate. Every town and village, there's lots of towns and villages. It's going to take some time. It's going to take some effort. Same with the mandate was given to Madhvacarya. It was a mandate. Now he's contemplating how to fulfill the mandate. But he had qualification. So then it became manifest. With lots of opposition. Risk your life kind of opposition. Not minor opposition. He broke ranks. With Shankaracharya, head on. Risk your life. Etc. So we don't necessarily have to risk our life, and that's predestined. We're survived. We just go walking down the highway because Krishna is going to protect me. We follow the path of previous acharyas, and success will be there, whatever that is. It may be small, maybe medium, maybe something significant, but whatever it is, we follow the path of the previous acharyas and receive descending mercy and go forward. And if we do so, then the predestiny will be fulfilled. It doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be through any one of us. It's just the principle is empowerment. I don't know if it's a good idea to bring a little girl in the front, because little girls are not necessarily going to be peaceful. While you are, the little girl may not be so peaceful. Yeah, I'm experienced. Okay, thank you. Nice girl. Anything more on this?
No,
Yes.
not on that topic, the Upanayana topic.
Okay.
So I understand that point about, being qualified. I heard your response early in the class and the other day. But? So there is this family tradition part where, at least for me personally, some of those have been gifts in my Krishna consciousness, the family tradition and the way we've been brought up. Some of them not, they've been baggages, and slowly we're kind of letting go of them. But this is one that I'm still on the fence, where does this family tradition, and on the other hand, we have this principle that you spoke about. If I can ask that.
We follow the path of our predecessor acharyas. If you have some particular application of this question in mind, you might want to say it. And if you don't, I'll give up. I'll put another one in front of you. Here's another one in front of you. You ready? There's a point of contact that's illustrating a principle. The principle is, what do we follow? Family tradition, or what Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has given us and Srila Prabhupada has given us, and so forth. So here's coming attractions. When we go to these temples in South India, the worshippers in those temples in South India have a very strict policy that ladies during their menstrual period are not to enter into temples. So the question is coming to the organizers, what do we follow? The local tradition, or that we don't have that restriction in ISKCON. Ladies during their menstrual, in ISKCON, ladies can come into the temple, not on the altar, but come into the temple before the deity, 360 days of the year. There's not a restriction within ISKCON. At least not that I'm aware of. Not that I'm aware that Prabhupada gave some instruction for us to follow. So now, what to do? It's not exactly family tradition, but it's, say, local respected tradition, Brahmana tradition. So what to do? That question was presented to me. I said, this is a good question. And I have to consider it very carefully before I just give an off-the-top answer. And there's something to be said on both sides. One side says, let us respect the local tradition. And that, at least those who want an answer to this question, let's follow local tradition, because that's respecting the local tradition. We're coming as a guest into their place, let's follow their tradition, which is one thing. And then there's the standard that we have within the followers of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. It's not just within ISKCON. To my knowledge, it's ISKCON, it's Gaudiya Vaishnavism. There isn't this same kind of restriction. Om apavitra pavitra va sarvabhastam gato biva yasmaret pundarigaksham. The purification is the remembrance of Krishna. Apavitra or pavitra, purified or unpurified. With scriptural authority behind both. So which does one do? Now that's an application, back to your question. In the case of Madhvacarya, it fits with the topic that we covered. When he was the son of Madhyageha, there's two considerations. One is Manu Samhita, and another is pleasing the Supreme Lord. And that which is pleasing to the Supreme Lord, a father should not restrict his son from doing. So, if you have an understanding of what's pleasing to the Supreme Lord, being respectful of the family and the family tradition, you do that which is pleasing to the Supreme Lord, which, so circumstance by circumstance, may go this way or may go that way, depending, because you don't want to turn people off, but at the same time you want to please the Supreme Lord. So pleasing relatives and family tradition, one may do, or one may not do. I suspect if I did a little survey of different Vaishnava authorities that I look up to, I'd get a bit of a spectrum of an answer to this question. So I'm not sure if I'm going to go through that exercise. I may, but I anticipate I'd get a spectrum of answers. And some answers are going to be, what I do with my disciples or followers or people I'm giving guidance to is this. Some are going to say that. So now how do you decide between family tradition and something that's, let's say, a Gaudiya teaching, not just an ISKCON, but a Gaudiya teaching, of Lord Chaitanya's teachings. And then one can make arguments. This, what's pleasing to this, like Madhyageha was making an argument. This is Manu Samhita. You can't violate Manu Samhita. It's the codes of mankind. Then he gave another one. This is also a principle, that you as a father shouldn't restrict me from doing that which is pleasing to the Supreme Lord. And his father's answer was, I've enough conversant in Scripture, I can handle it. But your mother, that's another story. So now what did he say? Of course, he's Madhvacarya, but I won't do unless my mother says okay. And some arrangement was made so his mother could say okay. Family tradition. And respecting, the Vedic codes, which family tradition may or may not be in line with Vedic tradition or Vedic codes. So there's discrimination. In short answer, there's discrimination factor, time, place, circumstance, kind of discrimination. And so your main concern, my main concern should be that Krishna should smile. And there may be different ideas according to an individual and according to circumstance where Krishna will smile. Or Krishna may smile both ways because you're thinking about what's pleasing to me. And then it's a judgment call. Then comes the next question: what are the particulars? So I don't need to, the example you have in your mind, if you have one, but it comes down to particulars. Okay. Delicate questions. See if there's someone else. Yes?
Hare Krishna Maharaj. Thank you so much for, very detailing out the Madhvacharya's things.
You can thank the team, Shamakunda and his team that put all this together.
When I visited Udupi, when I visited the Ananteshwara temple, I think that is across the Udupi Krishna temple.
Yeah.
I thought it is somebody built it after Krishna temple came. So Lord Shiva devotees did it. So I had a misunderstanding. So, but anyway, I was thinking, Maharaj, regarding the teachings of the Acharyas, especially Ramanujacharya and Madhvacharya. So, even Shankaracharya, right? It's the evaluation of from Buddhism.
Yes.
Getting out. But I don't have a problem in Shankaracharya teachings the way, because time, place and circumstances, he did that way. But when Madhvacharya also, Ramanujacharya, there are some kind of differences.
Yes, there are.
Things I was, stressing on some specific points is clear, but I was trying to understand why the kind of I gave a different opinion or a different understanding about, for example, Madhvacharya teachings about Jiva, right? Some are completely fallen, nothing falls from the Vaikuntha. So I was having kind of why those kind of teachings have to happen based on the time, place and circumstances.
Why not? Your question is, why must there be differences? And why not? Four times, this is the fifth time. A major part of the reason behind differences in Madhvas, I want to Madhvas and Gaudiya, because we're from the same line, but Madhva and Ramanuja. He had a very, very focused purpose. And his teachings matched the focused purpose. And we can assume, but more than that, we can accept, his teachings are founded in Scripture. So he's perceiving the sum total of Scripture in the manner that matched his mission. It doesn't dismiss other perceptions of the same Scripture. So diversity is just fine. So there comes the unity in diversity. And is it why diversity? Why not? There's varieties of people, just like the Vedas have different points. And there's varieties of people for whom those points in the Vedas are meant to elevate. So there's some persons of this disposition, that disposition. And so there's points of emphasis emanating from the one Veda, or the Vedas. I don't see it. I don't have a problem with there's diversity. And why diversity? Because that's just the way it is. There's diversity. There's a mission, there's a mandate, and he's fulfilling his mandate. Now our topic is, because I don't want to switch horses and go to the other three sampradayas, but they had a different mandate. and their teachings match their mandate, and with a particular audience in mind. At a particular stage also, chronological stage of addressing Shankara's teachings and the mess that it made in the hearts and the minds of many intellectuals, and persons follow intellectuals. At least some people follow intellectuals. Yadyarajrati Shreshtas. That match the mentality of people who are followers. And then Lord Chaitanya. Okay? More.
Second question, I mean, you might be covering this in the following classes on Udupi Yatra, during Udupi Yatra, and what is his take on the Ramanujacharya's teachings?
I don't think we're going to go there. That's a whole other seminar.
One online
I'm just digesting what's in front of me. And the plate is full. Just wait a minute.
One online question, Maharaj, can I ask?
Yes, please.
So I don't know, this is same RA. I'm not able to understand why biography of Madhvacharya named Mani Manjari, because Manjari means maid servant in Brajabhasha.
Well, Manjari may mean something to you, it means something else to Madhva followers. So don't assume that your meaning is the same as their meaning, or their meaning is right and therefore your meaning is wrong, or your meaning is right and therefore their meaning is wrong. Don't do that. Now, why that name was chosen, I don't know. I'm not a Sanskritist. I didn't have a friendship with Narayana Panditacharya, so I don't know why he chose that name. There's probably a reason. But it's not the same as our Gaudiya understanding of the word, Manjari.
Guru Maharaj, yesterday as we were hearing, you presented a slide in one of the slides, Bhaktivinoda Thakur's commentary about the importance of deity worship for the householders. So there it mentions, meditating on the Lord and other things as like cheating activities. I understand the intent being when we have the means, don't be miserly and not just...
Yes, that was the emphasis.
Not necessarily that depending on our propensity.
Don't take it the other way. Just take it for what it was. If one has means, one should use the means in worshiping the form of the Lord. That's what it said. It didn't mean other things.
Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj. Madhvacharya gave Dvaita philosophy. Other than that, he also talked about 5 topics. One of them is living entity and living entity.
One living entity is different than another, yes.
Yeah. Can you elaborate on that?
Huh? Elaborate?
Yeah.
You're not me and I'm not you. You're not your wife and your wife is not you. You have a nice relationship, but you're different people, different entities. That's difference. Not only the forms are different, but the soul. Different diversities of souls. That's the meaning. Is it clear? Not clear.
Yes.
You want to elaborate on your question?
All living entities are same, but I didn't think about it.
No. They're in the same category, but individually different. There's the Jiva Tattva. From our Gaudiya language, there's Jiva Tattva, and this living entity, this Jiva in this Jiva Tattva category is different than that Jiva in the same category. And there's so many Jivas, so many differences on the spiritual platform, not just on the covering platform.
Thank you.
Clear?
Thank you, Maharaj.
Anything in the back? Okay, you have something?
Guru Maharaj, most of what you narrated today is from the biography. And you also narrated a contemporary story of the psychiatrist.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering...
Yeah, you have to ask Shamakund about the psychiatrist story. I don't know where that came from.
So in principle, when we visit Udupi and Melkote,
Yeah.
we might come across different tales.
Different tales.
And I'm wondering...
Be careful.
So that's my question is, how are we... Because this is so unfamiliar.
Just smile. Don't take it seriously. Watch out for different tales. Same thing can happen in any one of the dhams. Mayapur, etc., etc. So be careful. Be careful means smile. The gate is closed. Thank you. Then, with discrimination, so I recited this because I have confidence in Shamakund is not just going to come up with something that's gobbledygook. So I have confidence in him. And based on that, I read it. The description that Hanuman this and that, the headline, Hanuman shows his form, it's not exactly what happened in that contemporary event. But there's a man in his dream or something, but so back to your question, the answer to your question is smile and don't take seriously, local stories. There may be something, there may not be something behind it, but don't be eager to hear different stories. Yes.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. Just to add to what you were telling, smile. My roommate had put one line in her door. Smile is the curve that makes everything straight. So that's just addition. But my question is regarding
Turn the
japa.
volume up a little bit. Speak a little louder. Speak a little louder.
Okay. Yeah, so my question is regarding japa.
Japa.
Yeah.
It's on topic again.
Yeah, because I'm not on the same level as other participants here. I have started doing japa, so I have to learn much more regarding that. That's why I have got question. How you keep focus? How
to stay focused in japa. It's right on topic. I recommend 2 things. Maybe 3 things. I'll recommend 3 things. For a person who's beginning to take japa seriously, we just recently, not too long ago, had a festival of the holy name, and many speakers spoke on the topic of making your japa stronger and better. So you get a nice, robust picture by hearing and seeing those recorded videos of different speakers speaking on the topic that you're asking about. A second point, I'm not sure it's really the second point, but another point is one of the speakers was Shyamasundar Prabhu, who came from Houston, and he's become not like, but something like, a very empowered person, a namacharya type person, or someone said during our festival holy name, he's becoming like the Indra of japa. And he's not like he's trying for that title or position or recognition. He's just so immersed. He has a call every day. You know Shatarupa? Okay. She'll give you the link and you can join the call. And it'll help you. It's helping devotees that have been chanting for decades. And it'll help devotees that are just getting started and everybody in between. He's just gifted. He has some Shakti to help people because he's got it. And he just shares it with others. And a third explanation is if you understand in principle of all the different beneficial activities you can engage in, the chanting of the holy name is the principal sacrifice for the sage, the Yuga Dharma. So just hold it way up there. So your understanding may be way down here, and your practices may correspond with your understanding. But hold it up there, and try to take shelter of the holy name. And if that's the spirit, then in the beginning and the intermediate and the advanced stage it's going to just grow. So you maybe in the beginning stage that's perfectly okay. Your neck won't get sore. Just keep looking up at the holy name. And mercy and light and Krishna's kindness will come through that medium, the holy name. It takes faith, but that's how it starts. So there are three things. It's off topic, so I'd like to stay on topic. I think we'll end. Can we end? Is it okay if we end? Thank you very much, Srila Prabhupada.